Inside Cook County Jail, Chicago, Illinois. One jail, $1 billion budget. Cook County Jail is one of the largest single-site jails in the United States, holding thousands of detainees every day, most of whom have not been convicted of a crime. Behind its concrete walls lies a system fueled by taxpayer money, court delays, political decisions, and a budget that has reached staggering levels. This documentary examines where that money goes, why the costs keep rising, and how one jail became a billion-dollar symbol of America's incarceration economy, according to public budgets, court filings, government audits, and investigative reporting. The price of a cage. Cook County Jail is not hidden. It does not sit in the middle of a desert or behind razor wire on the edge of civilization. It stands in Chicago, surrounded by highways, hospitals, neighborhoods, and daily life. Thousands of people pass it without realizing that behind those concrete walls is one of the most expensive local incarceration systems in the Western world. Every year, taxpayers fund it with close to, or over, $1 billion, according to county budget documents and public financial reports. That number isn't just a statistic. It's a pipeline of money flowing into staffing contracts, medical providers, food services, surveillance systems, overtime pay, lawsuits, and emergency repairs to aging buildings that were never designed to hold this many people for this long. And yet, despite the spending, the jail has been described in court filings and news investigations as overcrowded, understaffed, and dangerously strained. The contradiction is the hook. How does one jail cost this much? And still fail so many people inside it? Cook County Jail is massive. More than a dozen divisions. Multiple housing units. Medical facilities. Mental health wards. Secure transport systems. According to public records, it can hold more than 10,000 detainees, though the population fluctuates daily. On paper, it looks like a city within a city. In reality, it functions more like a pressure cooker. Most of the people inside are legally innocent. That's not a slogan, that's a matter of law. They are pretrial detainees, held because they cannot afford bail, are waiting for court dates, or are stuck in a backlog that stretches weeks, months, sometimes years. Court records show some cases delayed repeatedly due to staffing shortages, evidentiary issues, or overloaded courtrooms. Time becomes money. Every extra day someone stays in custody costs the county more. Housing. Food. Medical care. Security. Transportation. Each cost stacks, and none of them stop when cases stall. According to county budget breakdowns, staffing alone consumes the largest share of the jail's funding. Correctional officers, supervisors, administrators, medical staff, mental health professionals, transport officers, thousands of employees, many working overtime. Audits and Inspector General reports have repeatedly flagged overtime as a runaway expense, sometimes adding tens of millions of dollars annually beyond base payroll. Overtime isn't optional here. It's structural. When staffing levels fall, due to illness, burnout, resignations, or vacancies, remaining officers are mandated to work longer shifts. According to union contracts and county disclosures, those hours are paid at premium rates. The more unstable the system becomes, the more expensive it gets to keep running. But staffing is only the beginning. Healthcare is one of the jail's most explosive costs. Cook County Jail has been described in federal court oversight documents as one of the largest mental health care providers in Illinois, not because it was designed to be, but because so many people with untreated mental illness end up there. Public reporting has shown that a significant percentage of detainees require psychiatric medication, crisis monitoring, or suicide prevention protocols. These services are not optional. They are mandated by law and enforced through consent decrees and court supervision following past litigation. Medical contracts alone run into the hundreds of millions over multi-year periods, according to procurement records. Private healthcare providers bill for staffing, pharmaceuticals, hospital transfers, and specialty care. Every delay in release increases medical exposure. Every untreated condition becomes a potential lawsuit. And lawsuits are another line item. Cook County has paid out millions, sometimes tens of millions, in settlements and judgments related to jail conditions, according to public settlement records and news reports. Wrongful death claims. Civil rights violations. Medical neglect allegations. Use of force cases. Each lawsuit represents not only human suffering, but a financial aftershock that reverberates through the budget. The jail doesn't just hold people. It holds liability. Then there is the infrastructure itself. Much of Cook County Jail was built decades ago. Aging plumbing. Failing electrical systems. Crumbling walls. Security technology that requires constant upgrades. According to county capital improvement plans, millions are spent annually just to keep the facility operational, patching systems that were never meant to handle modern incarceration demands. Security cameras. Door controls. Data systems. Body scanners. Each upgrade is justified as a safety necessity, and often it is. But each one adds another layer of cost to a system already struggling under its own weight. Food services, too, are contracted at scale. Thousands of meals per day. Special dietary needs. Religious accommodations. Medical diets. Procurement contracts show millions allocated annually for food alone, often at razor-thin per-meal costs that raise questions about quality and nutrition, according to advocacy group reports. And yet, despite all of this spending, the jail remains overcrowded during peak periods. Cells designed for one person hold two. Dorms overflow. Tensions rise. According to Department of Justice findings in past investigations, overcrowding amplifies violence, medical emergencies, and mental health crises, each of which generates more costs. The cycle feeds itself. More people inside means more staffing needs. More medical emergencies. More overtime. More lawsuits. More repairs. More spending. And almost no one inside has been sentenced. This is not a story about a single crime. It's a story about a system where money flows continuously, regardless of outcomes. Where budgets grow even as conditions deteriorate. Where the jail becomes not just a place of detention, but a financial engine powered by delay, dysfunction, and political inertia. Public officials acknowledge the problem. Reports are commissioned. Task forces formed. Reforms proposed. Bail reform laws pass, altering who can be detained pre-trial. Populations dip, then rise again. Each shift changes the math but never stops the spending. Because once a jail reaches this scale, it cannot simply be turned off. Cook County Jail operates 24 hours a day, every day, regardless of crime rates, court schedules, or budget shortfalls. It must be staffed. It must be secured. It must provide constitutionally adequate care, or face federal intervention. And so the money keeps moving. Taxpayer-funded. Industrial scale. Relentless. What happens when a jail becomes too big, too expensive, and too embedded to fail? In the next chapter, we follow the money deeper, into contracts, court orders, and the financial incentives that quietly keep this billion-dollar system alive. Follow the money. The money doesn't arrive all at once. It never does. It moves in layers. Appropriations approved quietly in county budget sessions, line items buried under administrative language, emergency allocations justified by crises that never seem to end. On paper, Cook County Jail is funded like any other government institution. In practice, it operates like a permanent emergency, where extraordinary spending becomes routine and routine spending becomes invisible. County budget documents show that the jail's funding is spread across multiple departments and offices. The sheriff's office oversees daily operations. The County Bureau of Asset Management handles maintenance and capital improvements. The Department of Corrections contracts medical and mental health services. Legal settlements are paid through separate risk management funds. Each slice looks manageable on its own. Together, they form a system that absorbs enormous public resources with little public scrutiny. The complexity is not accidental. When costs are fragmented, accountability is diluted. Take staffing. Correctional officers are the backbone of the jail, and also its most expensive necessity. According to publicly available payroll data and union agreements, Cook County employs thousands of sworn officers assigned to the jail. Base salaries are only the starting point. Shift differentials, hazard pay, longevity increases, and, most significantly, overtime inflate total compensation far beyond what appears in headline figures. Inspector General reports have repeatedly flagged overtime spending as a structural problem. Officers working double shifts. Supervisors approving hours out of necessity rather than planning. Staffing shortages triggering mandatory overtime that cascades across weeks. In some years, overtime alone has added tens of millions of dollars to the jail's operating costs. This is not framed as abuse in official reports. It is framed as inevitability. When a housing unit cannot legally operate without a minimum number of officers, someone must fill the shift. When transport officers call in sick, detainees still need to be moved to court or hospitals. When violence breaks out, additional staff are required immediately. Each emergency generates hours, and hours generate pay. The system rewards presence, not outcomes. An officer who works 60 or 70 hours a week earns more, regardless of whether the jail population decreases or increases. Budget overruns are normalized, then absorbed into next year's baseline. What was once an exception becomes a precedent. Healthcare contracts reveal a similar pattern. Court filings and consent decrees stemming from past litigation require Cook County Jail to provide constitutionally adequate medical and mental health care. Failure to do so invites federal oversight, fines, and further lawsuits. To comply, the county contracts with private healthcare providers, paying for physicians, nurses, psychiatrists, medications, crisis response teams, and off-site hospital care. These contracts are massive. Multi-year agreements valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars, according to procurement records. Payments increase when detainee populations rise, when acuity levels increase, or when new court mandates are issued. Mental health treatment, in particular, has grown into one of the jail's largest expenses. According to reports from watchdog organizations and investigative journalists, Cook County Jail houses one of the largest populations of people with serious mental illness in the region. Many arrive untreated. Some deteriorate rapidly in custody. Suicide prevention protocols require constant monitoring, specialized housing, and increased staffing ratios. Each precaution costs money. Cameras. Observation cells. Additional officers. Medical specialists on call. When a crisis occurs, emergency hospital transports follow, billed separately. If something goes wrong, legal exposure multiplies. Healthcare spending is not just care, it is insurance against catastrophe. Then there are the vendors. Every jail operates on contracts. Food services. Laundry. Commissary operations. Phone systems. Electronic monitoring. Surveillance technology. Maintenance and repair firms. Each contract represents a flow of public money into private hands, governed by bidding processes that are often opaque to the average taxpayer. Food contracts alone are worth millions annually. According to county disclosures, the per meal cost is kept low through bulk purchasing and centralized kitchens. Advocacy groups have questioned nutritional quality, but the financial incentive is clear: cheaper meals reduce per detainee costs on paper, even as overall spending remains high due to scale. Telecommunications contracts generate a different kind of controversy. Phone calls from jail are often expensive for families, with fees shared between service providers and government entities. While some reforms have reduced costs, public records show that jail communications have historically been a revenue stream, one that monetizes isolation. Surveillance and security technology vendors promise efficiency and safety. Automated door systems. Facial recognition software. Body scanners. Data management platforms. Each upgrade is pitched as cost-saving in the long run, even as initial investments run into the millions. Once installed, systems require maintenance contracts, software updates, and training, ongoing expenses that lock the county into long-term financial commitments. Infrastructure spending tells its own story. Cook County Jail is old, and age is expensive. Capital improvement plans outline constant repairs, replacing failing boilers, fixing plumbing that cannot handle modern usage, upgrading electrical systems to support new technology. Emergency repairs cost more than planned renovations, yet emergencies dominate because full replacement would require shutting down housing units the county cannot afford to lose. Deferred maintenance becomes a budget strategy. Fix what breaks. Patch what leaks. Move people when systems fail. Each delay increases long-term costs, but spreads them out just enough to avoid political backlash. And then there is the cost of delay in the courts. Public court records show that many detainees remain in jail not because they pose a danger, but because their cases are stalled. Continuances. Missing evidence. Overloaded public defenders. Prosecutorial delays. Each postponed hearing means another day in custody, another day of expenses absorbed by the county. Bail reform efforts have attempted to reduce unnecessary detention, and in some periods, the jail population has dropped significantly. But even when numbers fall, fixed costs remain. Buildings still need to be heated. Staff still must be paid. Medical contracts remain in force. A smaller population does not translate into proportional savings. The jail is designed for volume. When volume decreases, inefficiency increases. Legal settlements add another layer of financial gravity. According to public settlement data, Cook County has paid millions over the years to resolve lawsuits related to jail conditions. Some cases allege medical neglect. Others involve use of force or failure to protect detainees from harm. Each settlement is negotiated quietly, approved by county boards, and paid from funds that ultimately trace back to taxpayers. Settlements are often framed as closures, moving past mistakes. Financially, they are signals. Signals that the system produces harm at a scale large enough to generate consistent legal liability. Yet the payments do not reduce future budgets. They coexist with them. Oversight exists, but it is fragmented. Federal monitors review compliance with consent decrees. The county inspector general audits spending practices. Advocacy groups issue reports. Journalists investigate patterns. Each identifies problems. Each recommends reforms. But no single entity controls the entire financial ecosystem of the jail. Responsibility is shared, and therefore diluted. Political incentives reinforce the status quo. Closing housing units requires alternative placements that do not exist. Reducing staff risks safety incidents that generate public outrage. Cutting medical spending risks federal sanctions. Any significant change carries immediate risk, while maintaining current spending carries only long-term consequences. So budgets roll forward. Emergency allocations become permanent. Temporary contracts are renewed. Overtime is normalized. The jail's financial footprint grows quietly, year after year. And inside the system, the money is invisible. Detainees do not see budgets. Officers do not see contracts. Medical staff do not see settlements. Each group experiences only their part of the machine, overworked, under pressure, constrained by policies written far above their heads. What they all feel is tension. A jail strained by volume and expectation. A workforce stretched thin. A population caught between legal limbo and institutional inertia. Public records show that when violence spikes, spending follows. When suicides occur, new monitoring protocols are funded. When lawsuits land, risk management budgets expand. The system responds to harm by spending more to contain it, rather than addressing the structural causes that generate it. This is not corruption in the cinematic sense. There are no hidden vaults or secret deals exposed in a single dramatic reveal. It is something more mundane, and more durable. A system designed to endure by absorbing money. Follow the money far enough, and it stops looking like waste. It looks like momentum. Contracts that cannot be cancelled without penalties. Staffing models that cannot be altered without risking collapse. Facilities that cannot be closed without building new ones somewhere else. The jail is too big to fail. And failure would not look like shutdown. It would look like chaos. Court injunctions. Federal takeover. Political fallout. No elected official wants that legacy. So the money keeps flowing. In the next chapter, we move inside the human cost of this billion-dollar system, the people whose lives are shaped, delayed, and sometimes destroyed by a jail that has become an economy unto itself. The human cost ledger. By the time the money reaches Cook County Jail, it has already been abstracted. Reduced to line items. Converted into percentages. Defended in hearings with charts and spreadsheets. But inside the jail, money stops being theoretical. It becomes time. Pressure. Confinement. Risk. And for the people inside, every dollar spent, or not spent, shapes the outcome of their lives. Cook County Jail does not sentence people. Judges do that. Juries do that. But the jail determines how justice is experienced. It determines whether a person waits for trial at home or behind bars. Whether a mental health crisis is treated early or allowed to escalate. Whether a minor charge becomes a life-altering interruption. According to public court records and investigative reporting, a majority of the jail's population consists of people awaiting trial. They have not been convicted. Many are accused of nonviolent offenses. Some are there because they missed a court date. Others because they could not afford bail before reforms took effect, or because a judge deemed detention necessary under existing law. For them, detention is not just confinement. It is erosion. Days in jail mean lost jobs. Evictions. Children left without caregivers. Medications interrupted. Court filings show defendants pleading for release not because they fear conviction, but because they are watching their lives collapse while they wait. Each delay has a cost. And that cost compounds. A public defender's office stretched thin requests continuances. Prosecutors manage overwhelming caseloads. Judges balance crowded dockets. None of this appears in the jail's operating budget. But the jail absorbs the consequences. More people stay longer. More beds are filled. More meals served. More medical appointments scheduled. More staff deployed. The financial system and the human system move in parallel, but they do not align. Inside the jail, overcrowding changes everything. According to Department of Justice reports and court oversight documents from past investigations, crowding increases violence, stress, and medical emergencies. Dormitories designed for fewer people hold more. Noise levels rise. Tensions sharpen. Privacy disappears. Correctional officers become mediators, guards, emergency responders, and mental health monitors, all at once. Many are working overtime, exhausted, stretched beyond training scenarios envisioned years earlier. Public payroll data shows some officers logging hundreds of overtime hours annually. Burnout is not an abstract concept here. It is operational reality. Mistakes happen in exhaustion. Missed checks. Delayed responses. Miscommunications. Each error increases risk. When harm occurs, it becomes a line item later, an internal investigation, a lawsuit, a settlement. Medical care inside the jail reflects the same strain. According to publicly available consent decrees and monitoring reports, Cook County Jail has struggled for years to meet constitutional standards of care, particularly for mental health. Progress has been made, officials say, but challenges remain. Mental illness does not pause for incarceration. Depression deepens. Anxiety spikes. Psychosis intensifies. The jail environment, noise, isolation, constant surveillance, can aggravate symptoms. Suicide watch protocols are implemented. Specialized housing units created. Additional staff assigned. Each intervention costs money. Each failure costs more. News reports have documented deaths in custody, some ruled suicides, others involving medical complications. In each case, investigations follow. Questions are asked. Policies reviewed. Settlements sometimes paid. The financial system responds after the human system breaks. Families experience the cost differently. Phone calls from jail are brief, monitored, and often expensive. Visits are limited, sometimes virtual, sometimes cancelled due to staffing shortages or security concerns. Parents speak to children through glass or screens. Relationships strain under uncertainty. Lost income hurts households already living close to the edge. Bail reform has reduced some of this harm, but court delays still trap people inside longer than expected. For many, release does not mean relief. It means rebuilding from damage already done. Employment gaps. Criminal records. Trauma. Taxpayers, meanwhile, rarely see the connection. They see headlines about billion-dollar budgets. About reform debates. About lawsuits and settlements. What they do not see is how much of that spending is reactive, responding to harm after it occurs rather than preventing it. Public records show that alternatives to detention. Pretrial services, electronic monitoring, community-based mental health care, cost far less per person than jail confinement. Studies cited in policy reports suggest that supervised release programs reduce failure to appear rates without the same financial or human toll. Yet investment in alternatives competes with the inertia of the jail itself. Money already committed is hard to redirect. Infrastructure already built demands use. Staff already hired require shifts. The jail does not adapt quickly. It absorbs. And so people cycle through. Some stay days. Some stay months. Some longer. A few emerge hardened. Others emerge broken. Court outcomes vary, but the experience of incarceration leaves marks that statistics cannot capture. Correctional officers carry those marks too. Public testimony and union statements describe a workforce under constant stress. Assaults. Mandatory overtime. Psychological toll. High turnover. Recruitment challenges. Training gaps. When officers leave, overtime increases for those who remain. When overtime increases, fatigue rises. When fatigue rises, risk increases. The cycle continues. Money sustains the cycle, but it does not resolve it. County officials speak of reform. Of modernization. Of decarceration strategies. Of reducing reliance on jail for mental health crises. Some progress is measurable. Population numbers fluctuate. Programs expand. Oversight improves. But the jail remains. It remains because it is the default solution to social failures beyond its walls. Untreated mental illness. Poverty. Housing instability. Substance use disorders. Court backlogs. Political compromise. Cook County Jail has become the place where these failures converge, and where the bill comes due. $1 billion a year does not buy resolution. It buys containment. According to audits and reports, much of the spending keeps the system from collapsing outright. It keeps doors locked. Lights on. Staff present. Crises managed. Lawsuits settled. It does not fundamentally change why people end up there in the first place. And so the ledger grows. On one side, staffing costs, medical contracts, maintenance bills, settlements, overtime. On the other, human lives paused, redirected, sometimes permanently altered. The balance never settles. This is the quiet truth of the jail's economy. It is not fueled by malice, but by momentum. By a system that responds to pressure by spending more, rather than stepping back and asking whether confinement itself is the most expensive choice of all. Cook County Jail stands as a case study in modern incarceration finance. Not because it is unique, but because it is honest in its scale. A single jail. $1 billion budget. Tens of thousands of lives passing through each year. When policymakers debate reform, this is the reality behind the rhetoric. When taxpayers ask where the money goes, this is the answer, spread across contracts, crises, and consequences. The jail is not just a place. It is a balance sheet written in human terms. And until the country reckons with the true cost of incarceration, not just in dollars, but in lives, the numbers will keep rising, long after the headlines fade. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy. When the numbers go quiet. When the cameras turn off, Cook County Jail doesn't stop. The lights stay on. The doors keep locking and unlocking. Officers report for another shift. Med carts roll down concrete corridors. Paperwork stacks up. Somewhere inside, someone is still waiting for a court date that hasn't been scheduled yet. Somewhere else, a family is checking their phone, hoping for a call that may never come today. This is what $1 billion system looks like when the headlines disappear. Budgets don't scream. Spreadsheets don't cry. Line items don't show fear, exhaustion, or regret. But behind every dollar spent on Cook County Jail is a human moment that never makes it into a financial report. A missed birthday. A lost job. A child asking why a parent hasn't come home. An officer driving home after a double shift, replaying a night that went wrong. The jail is often described as a failure of justice, or a failure of policy. But it is also a mirror. It reflects the choices made far beyond its walls, how societies respond to poverty, mental illness, addiction, and delay. It reflects what happens when containment becomes easier than care, and spending becomes easier than change. Public records show the money will keep flowing. Staffing costs will rise. Medical contracts will expand. Infrastructure will age further. Lawsuits will be filed. Settlements will be paid. And each year, another budget will be approved to keep the system running just well enough to survive. That is the quiet power of inertia. Cook County Jail was never meant to be one of the most expensive local incarceration systems in the world. It became one because it was allowed to. Because it filled gaps no one else addressed. Because every crisis justified another allocation, another contract, another emergency fix. And because once a system reaches this size, dismantling it feels more dangerous than sustaining it. For the people inside, time is the real currency. Days spent waiting. Weeks spent in limbo. Months spent losing pieces of a life that existed before arrest. For the people working inside, time is measured in shifts, overtime hours, and years until retirement. For taxpayers, time is measured in budgets that grow faster than understanding. This documentary is not an argument for chaos, nor a denial of public safety. It is a question. What does safety actually cost, and who pays it? If the price of running a single jail reaches $1 billion, What could that same money prevent before people ever reach those gates? What systems could be strengthened instead of patched? What lives could remain intact rather than interrupted? Those are not abstract questions. They are financial ones. Moral ones. Political ones. Cook County Jail will still be there tomorrow. The money will still move. The cycle will continue unless something breaks it. And maybe the first step is simply seeing it clearly, not as a symbol, not as a headline, but as what it truly is. One jail. $1 billion budget. And a cost that can't be fully measured in dollars alone. This story is a dramatized adaptation inspired by real events. Some names, places, and details have been changed for privacy.